Welcome to the wonderful world of Ghost Horse Hollow. I'm your host, Anne Severn Williamson, and this is My Family Book Nook. My Family Book Nook podcast is brought to you by the Owsley County Public Library in Boonville, Kentucky, and by Jackson Energy, a Touchstone Energy cooperative, and by Ghost Horse Gifts, featuring the fine intaglio jewelry and gemstone sculpture of artisan Jack Williamson. On the web at www.etsy.com/shop/ghosthorse-gifts. My Family Book Nook features the saga of the McKinnon homesteaders 100 years in the future in the Appalachian wilderness. Listeners may wish to follow along in the fairy lore of Ghost Horse Hollow, available on Amazon Books and Kindle Readers, starting with Book 1, Turn of the Blade. My Family Book Nook also shares stories, myths, and legends from around the globe in support of world literacy, conservation, and cultural exchange. Our next story in support of world literacy, conservation, and cultural exchange was retold in 1904 by Teresa Pierce Williston in her delightful Japanese fairy tales book. Fairy tales encourage us to behave with good character and to commit to serving others, not just ourselves. Courage, compassion, patience, and perseverance are rewarded, usually with good fortune, wealth, comfort, and positive relationships. And so it is around the globe. Listen to the Japanese fairy tale in our podcast with these qualities in mind. Also, note the use of symbolic numbers, such as 4, 5, 8, and 2. The study of numerology involves researching ancient civilizations and cultures with an appreciation for mathematics and how numbers were symbols of life experiences and more abstract concepts such as infinity, stability, instability, and balance. And now for the modern original version of the 8-headed serpent. Long ago, the great God Susano walked beside the beautiful river High. He walked for 4 days and saw no living thing. At the end of the 5th day he lay down to sleep in a green bamboo thicket near the edge of the river. When the moon was full and bright over the dark waters, Susano dreamt of a lovely maiden floating down the river. Her hair and eyes were as black as ink, and her complexion like a petal of the purest rose. The beautiful girl was weeping. Just then, in Susano's dream, a great monster arose out of the river High and bent low to swallow the crying maiden. The god swam out, swift and strong, and rescued her. Susano awoke at dawn and pondered his vivid dream. He thought to himself how strange it was to have seen no living thing in the lush river valley, save for some geese and ducks flying overhead. He decided to go upriver for another day. If by nightfall he still had not seen another living being, even a rabbit or a fish, he decided that he would return to heaven. As he made his decision, something floated down the river toward him. Susano beheld a chopstick spinning in the blue waters and making its way downstream. "Ah," he said aloud, "someone dwells in this land. I will make my way to them." He hurried on and came to a bend in the river, where an old woman and her poor husband sat beside the bank and wept. Their lovely daughter, Niko, was trying to comfort her mother and father. "Please do not weep for me, dear ones. I must be brave and face my fears like my sisters before me." Susano was surprised to recognize the girl in his dream. "What is troubling you, my friends?" he asked. "Perhaps I may be of service." The old woman answered in a frightened voice, "No one is able to help us, kind warrior. Our last daughter must go the way of her 7 beautiful sisters before her." We are in great danger. Please, tell me all, Susano said tenderly. There is a terrible monster, said the old man, who has 8 heads and 8 sharp tails and 8 red tongues. He comes down the river each spring and carries off one of our beloved daughters. Now there is only one left, our youngest daughter, little Niko. The serpent will come soon. Nothing can save her from this fate. Now the god thought that beautiful Niko should not become a meal for an ugly monster. He bowed his head in respect and told the family to fear not. He would sit in the green bamboo thicket beside the cool waters and think of a plan to save their youngest daughter. All day and all night, Susano sat and thought and thought. The stars twinkled overhead and faded to blue as the gold and crimson sun rose over the river high. The old woman brought him rice cakes, fish, prawns, and hot green tea, but the god touched not the steaming dishes. He thought and thought in the bamboo thicket, listening to the river flow by. This part of my Family Book Nook podcast is dedicated to world conservation. Everyone can make a difference by restoring the world's forests, conserving energy, recycling, developing and sharing green technologies, farming organically, preserving wilderness, and protecting our pollinators. To live in harmony with the earth is to respect the sacred hoop of life. And now our adventure continues. Just as the sun sank low in a blaze of plum and lavender light, he went to the old couple and little Niko. Weep no more, my kindred. I have thought of a daring plan to save your daughter. Get some sleep, for tomorrow we will rise before dawn and begin work. Long before light, the old woman busily prepared 8 huge kettles of soup. She stirred the soup around and around, adding the vegetables to the boiling broth. The steam rose high into the air and filled the river basin with a delightful scent. Susano and the old man built a great wall of mud and clay in the middle of the river high. They carved 8 gates in the wall and set a kettle of rich soup in front of each gate. Then Susano crushed some leaves from a plant beside the river and blessed each kettle of soup. The bruised leaves intensified the aroma of the soup. The smell of delicious ginger and fresh green onions rolled up the river and over the nearby hills. Soon a great roar from the monster spilled down the valley and shook the ground. The family fled and hid in the bamboo thicket, but Susano arose and drew his bright sword. Down the river floundered a huge water dragon with 8 heads, 8 tails, and 8 red tongues. The dragon smelled the delicious soup. He was greedy and wanted every drop. The serpent poked his heads through the 8 gates in the wall and dipped his 8 tongues in the 8 kettles. Snip, snee! Susano cut off one of the dragon's heads with his sharp sword, then another, and another. The monster roared with pain, but continued to eat soup. Snip, schnick, snee! Susano cut off another head. Still the dragon slurped from the kettles. It was better to lose a few heads than miss the wonderful broth and the flavorful herbs that Susano had carefully used to season the soup. Snip, snap, snee! Susano cut off 2 more heads. Now the greedy monster had only 2 heads left. He roared once more at his enemy, but continued to eat the soup. Susano ran along the top of the wall, and snip! He cut off the 7th head, while the dragon was slurping the broth. Now the monster pulled his head out of the 8th gate and stared hard at Susano. The dragon opened his great mouth and slithered his tongue. He prepared to swallow the brave warrior god. But brave Niko jumped out of the thicket and distracted the monster by waving her hands in the air. The monster turned his attention to the youngest daughter and weaved his last head back and forth in anticipation of another snack. Susano leapt from the wall and landed on the back of the last head. He raised his sharp sword to the sun. Schnick, schnick, schnee! The 8th head of the serpent could no longer eat soup. It rolled down the blue river and out of sight. The headless body of the dragon quivered, and the 8 tails shook until the bamboo leaves quivered too, and the geese and ducks flew into the sky. At last, the old woman and the old man came out of the thicket and wept tears of joy. No longer would the 8-headed serpent trouble the peaceful valley. Susano invited the brave maiden to join him above the fluffy clouds in heaven. Niko was pleased to be the bride of the clever, yet humble, God Susano. To this day, the happy couple look down upon the earth and help those who are in trouble. Sometimes a cloud will pass by that looks like a dragon searching for a kettle of good steaming soup. The kindly God Susano and his brave partner Niko will be close behind. Thank you for listening to my Family Book Nook podcast. Subscribe to our blog at myfamilybooknook.blogspot.com and follow us on Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube at Ghost Horse Hollow and Ghost Horse Gift Gallery. To advertise with my Family Book Nook, contact Podbean's Pod Ads program for more information. Join us each Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, USA, for another episode in the exciting saga of the McKinnon homesteaders, as well as stories from around the globe. Podbean.com podcasts are available through a convenient app on your PC, tablet, or cell phone. Listen anytime. We appreciate your sharing my Family Book Nook episodes with your friends and family on social media. Watch it grow. Special thanks to the lovely Price Sisters on the web at thepricesisters.com for our closing music. Follow me on Instagram _ghost_horse. This is Anne Severn Williamson, and it's been a pleasure